Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Two Peas in the Podcast, episode 6, would you believe? I am Katie Oman, and this is my beautiful co host. Say hi, everyone.
Hi, I am Jessica.
And we are here with another fabulous episode for you. And we're so excited about this, aren't we? I am like,
Yes, I love talking about paranormal stuff. That's why I'm looking extra vampy today for the occasion.
yes, because we are talking about the supernatural, the paranormal, the spooky today. And like, we've got stories. We make sure we've limited it to 3 each because seriously, we will be here all day. But we are super excited to get into those.
Yes.
So, where should we start, my darling? What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I think that first we should get it out of the way that yes, we believe in ghosts, spirits, the paranormal. I understand that some people don't, and that's okay. But I think that there's a lot of things in life that we don't understand. There's a lot of unknowns in life. So this is just one of those things.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it'd be a bit of a short episode if neither of us really believed. It'd be like, okay, ghosts, yeah, we don't believe. See you next week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless one of us didn't and one did, then that'd be a really good debate episode. But no, we both I've had enough experiences where it would be willfully ignorant for me to not believe.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. You know, it's been in my life since even before I had any concept of what it was and what was going on. So when I was a kid and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, it's like you say, to deny it at this point would be a bit like daft, really, for a better word. So yeah, we both believe that is for sure. Although we were talking before we started the recording that we believe that there are different types, of course, that it isn't just a one size fits all kind of thing, right?
Yeah. There are different and whether you call a ghost, spirit, a specter, there's a poltergeist, like what you were talking about, an energetic, basically snapshot of what happened. There are all different types of paranormal experiences, but they all basically wrap up to the same thing, something that we can't explain, something that we connect with that we can't explain in our physical reality. So
absolutely. And yet, what I also know from my own experience and from talking to so many people over the years is that so many people are like seriously frightened of this stuff, right?
Yeah. And I think that's natural.
Sure,
I
but
think that's
I would argue that Hollywood has a lot to answer for in people's fears.
Yeah. And and that's the thing. I have been very blessed where I haven't had some of the really terrifying, disturbing experiences that some people have had. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen. I've had people tell me about their experiences, and I'm just like, wow, I would be terrified if that happened to me. But I do think that Hollywood kind of, does things over the top and really invokes that fear, And so, yeah, I think it's really natural. It's normal to be a little bit afraid of things that, happen that you can't see, you can't explain. But I do think that Hollywood plays a role in over what is the word? Dramatizing it.
Yeah, and sensationalizing the whole thing because that's what they do. It has to, that's what sells. It sells the movies, it sells the TV programs. But, I say to when I've mentored people in this field, I've said to them, look, the reality of the situation is this, in my experience. 99% of spirits are your loved ones who have passed on, right? That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Is there a 1% that is a lower vibrational energy? So shall we say? Yeah, of course there is. It would be daft again to deny that exists. However, Hollywood flips that number. So Hollywood will say 99% of spirits want to hurt you, kill you, drive you crazy, all the, and it's the 1% that are nice. And it's like we have to see the reality of the situation, because if every time you see something or you hear something or you feel something that you can't explain and you're terrified, you're going to give yourself a lot more anxiety than you need to, basically.
Yeah. And I think that actual true hauntings where, you are like dodging things that are flying through the air and there's blood on the walls and things like that, that's very rare, actually.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's as common as most people would believe that it is. And I also think that, fear plays a big role in whether something is negatively attracted to you. Which is not easy to obviously control, but I do think fear plays a role in that. Like, fears can make things worse than they actually are, too.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And of course, that's where we touched on this last time, that my mentor was a psychic medium. And of course, she was guiding me down her path to kind of tap into mediumship. But because I have so much fear around it, I was bringing in negative experiences, which we'll touch on soon, which was just confirming my own fears, which was then drawing more in. So I was just in this really negative fear loop where it was just totally putting me in a complete tears, where I just shut the whole thing down because I was like, I can't deal in this space.
Yeah, and I have that, not the same experience, but I have a similar experience, which we'll talk about where, yeah, I mean, I think everybody has their limits.
Yeah.
Even though we both know that I get less scared of that stuff than you, I think. It doesn't bother me as much. I mean, I've had some experiences happen where Katie's like, if that happened to me, I'd be upset, genuinely upset. And I'm just like, well, I didn't feel anything negative, it is what it is. But I too am a little touchy when it comes to the medium stuff, as you know.
Yes,
I
it's
don't
conversation
feel
we
comfortable
had.
with. Listen, sister. She has been telling me for a very long time, y'all, that you're a medium, you're a medium. One day you'll accept this. One day, and I'm just like, well, we'll see about that. I'm not
I
saying she's
mentioned it.
wrong. I'm just saying we'll see.
Once the blue moon, I'll bring it up. And Jess kind of bats it away, and I go, okay, we'll talk about it at a later time.
Because as we'll talk about with one of my stories, I made a deal with spirit, and I just don't know if that deal is going to be stepped back on. And so it's kind of like, but we'll see. I'm not saying she's wrong, folks. I'm just saying we'll see.
We'll see. Funny. What I will say before we dive into these stories is we appreciate that this is just our experiences and it's just our beliefs about them. You can disagree with us. You can think that we are Lulu for Cocoa Pops. We know we're fine. But we are really interested in your paranormal experiences that you've had. So let us know because we love reading them. We love this stuff. So if you've had anything where, again, you've seen stuff, heard stuff, felt stuff, smelt stuff, tasted stuff, all that stuff, and you can't explain it, please let us know because it's gorgeous, right? So we love the story.
Yeah, and I want to say too that thank you for bringing that up because paranormal doesn't mean also just ghosts.
No.
I feel like paranormal can be like alien, like extraterrestrial experiences, phenomena, things that you just can't explain, basically.
Absolutely. And of course, there's a whole range of beliefs about that. There are some people that believe in like the fae and unicorns and dragons. And so it's like, and we're not here to call people out. And please, in the comments, don't do that because it's not that space. If you don't believe what someone else believes, that's fine. That's what spirituality is. But it's interesting. That's how I always see it.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I love hearing about other people's experiences,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, well, I think we should get started on our experiences, and we're going to go ladies first. That would be you.
Why am I the lady today? Honestly.
Yes.
Okay, I will go in first. So I have to start first one first, right? And I really thought about which ones I wanted to talk about, and it's the ones that are most vivid to me, the ones that had the most effect on me. And my first experience, there is I'm in the UK, for those who don't know this accent, how could you not? And there is a place in the middle of the country called Stratford upon Avon, which is where Shakespeare was born, right? And so, even if you know nothing about the UK, everyone knows Shakespeare. And in that town, there is a attraction, if you like, called the Shakespeare Experience, which claims to be one of the most haunted buildings in Britain. Now, a lot of places claim that, but you take it with a pinch of salt, whatever. So myself and my eldest and my partner at the time, we were going around the town and we saw this. And of course, I'm in this space of just opening up and just, looking at my gifts and stuff. So, and he was really interested in the paranormal. So he was like, oh, let's go in. My eldest son, as we went through the door, he was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to. And he was only probably about 10 at the time. So my partner said, look, I'll stay outside with him because he wasn't really old enough to stand on his own. And he said, so you can go in if you want on my own. And I was like, all right. So paid my money, went in. And the whole thing is set up like it's Tudor times, but there are displays about different aspects of Tudor life. So you've got education, you've got the workhouses, you've got the shipping. You know, it's the different, and they've got mannequins in there. So it's not AI, it's not, you know, it's not robotic, it's not holograms, it's not video. Literally, it is these mannequins are set up in these poses, and there's things to read, and then they play sounds over the tannoy. Like, it's very old fashioned, but it's whatever. But it also say it claims to be one of the most haunted places in Britain. So I am like super aware of this. I'm on my own. I'm walking around and looking at everything and whatever. And I come to the place where there's barrels on the floor because it's the shipping bit, right? And I swear to God, this is true. Now, bear in mind, like I say, no animatronics, no holograms, no videos, just these mannequins. And as I look like that at a barrel, a male face comes up from behind one of the barrels that has this dark, shaggy hair back to about here, this big beard, and he growls at me. Ooh. He literally goes, "Argh." And I pooped my pants. And I thought, okay, I cannot run because there are other people there. It's not just me. And I didn't want to look like, you know, what the frig, this woman's just like, ah, and running out. So, but I am like power walking now to the exit because I'm like, no, and no, right? Because his energy was not good, obviously. The last thing before you get to the exit, and the exit is the entrance, it's the gift shop. You just go around the big circle. The last thing is Shakespeare. And there is I don't know what was behind the curtain. I'm guessing it's probably like a storage door or a staff door, but there's a door behind the curtain and the door is shut, right? And as I walk past the door to get out, the curtain goes like this, and I hear, and I'm like, no, I'm out. Get back into the gift shop, and I'm obviously like, I know I'm white, but I'm like white in the white. I'm like milk, right? And the gift shop lady, she goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I went, I didn't cry, but I was like, "Oh my God, I've just like seen this, I've heard this." And she went, "Oh yeah, that's Roy." Who's Roy? She went, "Oh, he was a guy who lived here like hundreds of years ago, and in his lifetime, he raped and killed about 50 women. He does that to the female guests that we have." And I was like, "Can we go home now, please?"
How are you going to have a actual like resident ghost and not warn people about that? Like, even if it was just part of the attraction, because as you said, they already dub it as the most haunted place in the UK. So why wouldn't you have warning to women? There could be a weirdo that pops up and growls at you.
Like, surprise.
I don't know. That's freaky to me. That is so freaky.
Yeah, I mean, luckily he didn't follow me, which isn't the story I'll get into, but yeah, it wasn't, and I can still obviously see his face to this day. It was just angry, really angry face with all this dark hair and just growling at me, like, ugh, no.
Yeah, and then out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And honestly, mannequins are already creepy enough. I don't like mannequins.
Yeah, but two of my children hate them. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why my eldest didn't want to go in. He hates mannequins.
Yeah. And he's also a little like sensitive in this, you know, that way anyway, like where I feel like he does pick up things. Yeah. That's just something we've observed over the years with him. Yeah. So, yeah. Wow.
So, yeah, that was not fun. And that's my first kind of, you know, after my spiritual awakening, which we talked about in the last episode. If you haven't watched that, go and check it out. That was my first kind of spooky experience. It wasn't the best of starts, really.
Yeah, no, you know, that's especially the jump scare aspect. And with how you don't even really like horror films and things, and that is something that would actually be in like a ghost movie, some kind of experience like that. So yeah, I can see why that would freak you out. I don't know if you've ever told me that before, maybe a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, I am the type. I remember my dad just very quickly, my dad took me to like it was like Madame Tussauds, which is the Waxworks, but it's up in the north, so it's not the London one, so it's a cheaper one. And they've got like a London dungeon aspect with like, scary horror things. That was only about 9 or 10. And there was a guy with a black cloak on like this standing there. And I thought it was a mannequin. And as I walked past, he just put the guy, obviously he was an actor, put his hand on my shoulder. And I literally had the biggest freaking meltdown you've ever seen in your life. And I don't melt down. I screamed and I buried my face in my dad's coat and I was like literally hyperventilating, sobbing. The poor actor was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Is she okay?" So yes, don't like scary things. So having that experience with that face, yeah, not fun.
That's funny though.
Ugh.
But I feel like that experience was actually genuinely creepy. Like I would be creeped out. I would never want to go back to that place.
No, well, I didn't.
Ever again.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, look, Jess, story tennis. You'll go.
Okay. So yeah, we've decided we're going to go back and forth. Okay. So since you started with your first experience, I'll start with one of my first experiences that I can remember. And I'm thinking about significant ones, guys, because I have had quite a few paranormal experiences from a very young age. So I'm just going with very significant ones. And I, because I'm theatric, have named my stories. So the first one is the man in the doorway. Okay. And this was when we've lived all over Florida my whole life. We've moved around a lot because my dad was construction and a supervisor and superintendent and all these things. So we always would move about every 2 years. So I never got used to a place for too long.
Yeah.
My mom was very much acknowledged the fact that she had mediumship skills and abilities. Like I've said numerous times, everybody in my family has some kind of gift or ability. So we've had a lot of paranormal experiences because my mom was a medium. Obviously, they have like a beam of light. They attract entities and stuff. So by default, I've been around it a lot. My brother also is a medium who attracts things like that. So we lived in a house in Central Florida. I think it was around Melbourne. And later in life, I found out from my mom that this place was actually quite haunted and there was a lot of things that happened. I just didn't recognize it because when you're a child, you don't really pay attention to those things. So one day, I don't know, 8, 9, maybe 10, I played with Barbies to a very late age, guys, and I'm not ashamed of it, okay? So save your shame for somebody else. I love Barbies. But I was in my room playing Barbies by myself. It was just me and my sister was home at the time. And I think my little brother was with my parents or something like that. And I'm just like, on the floor, on my bedroom floor. I remember my bed was behind me and the doorway was in front of me. And I'm just like, playing with Barbies and stuff. And I look up because I had that sensation too. And there is a figure of a man standing there. And I couldn't see the top of his face, like from like maybe here up, it was all kind of blacked out like shadow, like almost like him in the doorway. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like him in the doorway, this was like a silhouette almost that kind of faded into what was behind the door, basically like darkness, right? But I could see this all down. And he had on blue jeans. He had on a belt that I remember the belt buckle. And then he had on a red flannel long sleeve shirt and he was just standing there watching me, right? And I don't know why I have this kind of reaction, but I just kind of was like, and I looked down and I looked back up and he was gone. And so I sat there for a second and I was like, and I don't know what my 8, 9-year-old brain was processing, but I went ahead and I ran through the doorway and I went to my sister's room, who was down the hall across. And I was like, Aaron, I was like, there was this man standing at the doorway. And I didn't describe what he looked like. I just said there was a man standing there. Well, she's a teenager at this point and has absolutely no time for her annoying younger sister. Like she literally told me to kick rocks pretty much. I don't care. Right? Like, I don't want to hear your voice. You're doing this. I need you to do this. Basically was how my sister was to me. Okay. So I was like, okay. So I went back to my room and everything. About 5-10 minutes later, no later than 10 minutes later, my sister comes into my room. She looks, because my sister is also white, like sheet white. And she goes, the man that, and I get goosebumps just thinking this, I really do. She's like, the man that you were talking about, did he have jeans and a flannel shirt on? And I was like, yeah. She said that she was right, I think she was writing or she was doing homework or something, but she looked up at her doorway and there was a man that walked by her door. And I get so goosebumpy with this, guys. Like, it's like, ooh, it's really goosebumpy. And she said he had on all, she couldn't see his top. And that was what was crazy, because I didn't tell her what he had looked. She didn't give me the time or the energy to explain what he looked like. She basically was like, be gone. So when she told me that his top was blacked out, but she could see the flannel and she could see the jeans, yeah. And we didn't know what to think about that. We told our mom. She was kind of like, oh, well, maybe you guys were just seeing something. Make sure the doors are locked. Of course, my mom, she knew the house was haunted, but she didn't want to tell us kids that. Again, later in life, we found out, because I brought that up to my mom, that yes, that house was actually very haunted. And my mom was pretty sure she had seen that exact man. So that was my real, like, first experience seeing something like full body apparition. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah. And it was creepy. I'm not going to lie. It actually caused me to, this is where I said that I don't know how my mediumship skills would go in with the deal that I made with spirit. At that time, calling it God, right? I prayed because I've always been a little bit of, into that thing. And so I basically asked God, look, I'm okay with seeing the reactions of these things. So hearing the bumps, maybe hearing the voices, maybe seeing the cabinet doors shut or whatever, but I don't want to see anything. I don't want to see them. And I made that like, will you promise me that? And that is pretty much the last time that I have actually seen anything. Not the last time I've experienced things. Obviously, we just had something happen the other night, but the last time that I've seen anything. So spirit has really kept up that promise for me. So maybe some advice for those watching, if you have a lot of experiences, I find that the other side, they're not going to put anything more on you than you can handle.
Yeah.
And if you ask for protection, you ask for support, like, I don't want to see it, but I'm willing to interact in different ways, it might work for you. But that's my first experience.
Yeah, because we definitely have free will, as we were saying last time. The universe, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, is not going to put more on you than you want. So if you ever get frightened or it gets too much or whatever, just ask and it will be removed.
Yeah.
So, but it's fascinating. Did you have trouble sleeping after that, or was it just like, 'cause I know how you can be now, but back then, were you frightened?
I can't remember if I was, to be honest with you. And this is something that I've talked to with my therapist quite a few times, because I can't remember a lot of my childhood.
Yeah, no.
For some odd reason. But I don't remember being scared. I remember a lot of weird things happening. Like I said, when I was growing up, there were paranormal experiences, knocking on the walls, things being moved around, where it was kind of like a normal type of thing for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say fortunately, because that sounds really rude, but unfortunately, my brother seemed to get the brunt of the hauntings for us growing up, because he did have mediumship abilities. He's told us stories where he's had things floating above his bed, looking down at him, going into the closet, and there's like an old woman in the closet crouched down looking at him. Like, yeah, my brother. And that's why he is so resistant to this stuff nowadays, because he is very resistant to it, because he has had some experiences that would make you be like, wow. So but I fortunately was spared.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about saying that. I think I would poop my pants, but so I'm glad that in the nicest possible way that it happened to you and not me.
you know how, like, with your story, how the guy growled at you.
Yeah.
This felt like just because I've always been empath. So I've always been able to pick up energies, emotions, and feelings and stuff, whether I knew that that's what I was doing at the time or not. I gotta say, what the feeling was that I was getting off of this energy was just genuine curiosity. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't think it was there to scare us. I don't think it was there to mess with us. I don't remember anything else happening like that with that particular being. But it was more just like, just looking in, seeing what you're doing, standing at the doorway while this girl's playing with Barbies, and then that's it. Like, but still gives me goosebumps. Still kind of is like, I will never forget that. Like you said, you'll never forget that guy's face. I will never forget that image of looking up at the doorway and he's there in the doorway. I will never forget that.
Wow. Crazy. Crazy. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Right. So, story 2. This is my longest story. It's not too long, don't worry. We won't be here for an hour, but this is my longest story because this is the crazy story I have. And I've told this to different people and they're always like, oh my God, I would be terrified. But it ended really well. So that's a good thing. It gets a little crazy in the middle, but it ends really well. Okay. So hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. So, where I used to live in the middle of the country, I now live on the East Coast. I used to have to do north, south, east, west, on the East Coast of the UK. I used to live in the middle of the country. And there is a pub, a bar, that is one of the oldest in the country. And it is said that Dick Turpin, the highwayman, used to frequent that on his travels. Again, don't know. I don't know that's true, obviously, but that's what they say. And my ex and I were there having dinner. And like I said before, he was really interested in the paranormal. So he's going, oh, can you feel anything? Can you sense anything? And I'm like, I don't know. But I went to the toilet at one point. I didn't like the toilet. It had a weird energy. Kind of really like, you feel like just uncomfortable. But apart from that, no, just had my dinner and we left and came home. And I was still living with my mum and my stepdad at that point. And so he was saying my parents were away and my ex was staying with me. And the next morning, the phone was ringing in the hall. And so I run down the stairs, and where the phone was by the front door on one side, and opposite that, there was a mirror. And it's my mom, and she's like, hey, this is what we've been, this is what we've been doing, we're coming home, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. And as I'm talking to her, I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I know, narcissistic, it's whatever. But I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I swear, as I'm talking to my mom and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, I see a black hand emerge from the side of my leg, my right leg, from my thigh. It literally comes out. I'm just going to go and do something. She's like, yeah, okay, cool. And I run up the stairs to tell my partner. And what was great about this was that I have a witness because he was obviously part of this. Because as I go into the bedroom, both of us hear what can only be described as the sound of bells, like a dinner bell, ding-a-ling-a-ling, but it's coming from everywhere. It's like the noises, it's like surround sound. It's coming from everywhere. And we both hear it and we're both like, what the hell is that? For like 5 seconds. And as soon as it started, it stopped. And we're like, okay, this is weird, right? Then what is going on? I told him about the hand in the mirror and he's like, this is really odd. Anyway, we then go out in his car to go and meet my parents because they were coming back. And as we got in the car and start driving, he's driving, can only be described as like a wall of energy between us in the car that literally feels like there's like a barrier here. And there's nothing there, but I feel like I cannot put my hand across to him. I can't do it. And both of us feel really tired all of a sudden. For like 5 minutes, both of us feel really drained, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And I'm like, okay, something is going on, right? Mm-hmm. Now, at the time, like I say, I had my dear mentor, Barbara, who's no longer with us. And so when we got home later on, I ring her and I'm like, I explained to her everything that happened. And she said, hang on a minute, because obviously she's a medium. She's like, and she's so casual, bless her. She went, oh yeah, I see him. She said, while you were having dinner, he saw your light. And so he's followed you home because he thinks you can help him pass over to the other side. And I'm like, great, right? Because fab. I had no idea then about like energetic protection or boundaries or anything like that. I was literally like an open channel to everything. So obviously he just saw my light and was like, oh, and followed me home. He said, he's not dangerous. He's not scary. He just wants to cross over. I'm like, okay, cool. So she gave me this ritual to do. And as I was telling you before we started, Jess, I did this and it worked. And I've also given it to a client and it worked for her too. So I'll tell you what this is. It's very simple, dead easy. I went round and I opened every door and window in the property, all of them. open, even if it was not the warmest day, but I opened them all up. And she said, light a white candle, which I did. And I recited the Lord's Prayer out loud. And then I told this spirit to go to the light, that it was safe for him to go. And I literally felt him leave me. It was like somebody took a heavy coat off my shoulders. I felt him go. And I didn't have any other paranormal activity from him after that moment.
Wow. Okay.
So that was my crazy experience from, yeah.
And that is honestly one of my my fears, is something following me from wherever, because you never know when you're going to walk into an experience like that. You never know what's attached to a house, a place, or whatever. And so that is, yeah, but that is interesting. And I think that that's really a good technique for people to use. Yeah. The creepiest part about that was the black hand coming out of nowhere. That's creepy. That's like some Insidious, like the movie Insidious. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I've heard of it, because I haven't watched it, because as we've established,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what was interesting is I didn't freak out, because you know me, I would be like, right? I didn't freak out. I just was like, huh, that's interesting. So obviously, I don't know whether subconsciously or energetically, I was like, I wasn't frightened. I knew there was no reason to be frightened. I was just curious. I was like, this is weird.
I think it's like, because like you said, the first story, that guy obviously was not a good energy.
No.
You know? And so with this second one, it's like he wasn't harmful. He was just confused, lost, needed assistance. So maybe on some level, you're able to decipher when something is dangerous versus when it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And now, I mean, I have so many family in spirit that, like, if anything happens to this house, I'm just like, hi. You know, it's a whole different thing. And I do think you learn to know the difference in energy signature. I think you do know something's there to hurt you or not, or wants to anyway.
Yeah, because you told me, I think it was a couple weeks ago, you told me that you heard a knock, bang, bang, right above you on the wall, and you didn't even seem to really react from it. So that's growth.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Like or like you're just experiencing stuff so much at this point where it's just like, whatever. That's kind of how it's been for me. So that's why it's hard to really get a true reaction out of me now, because I've been through so much.
Exactly. So, you know, if we ever freak out about anything, there's a reason to freak out.
Yes. There is a reason. Listen, I'm going to give you some life advice. If I run screaming, just follow. Just follow. Don't even ask why. I'll explain later, I promise. You know, just whether it's a spider, bad vibes, an ex-boyfriend, I will explain later why we're running, but just follow me. I will lead the way. Because,
you know, I said that to my friends. I went, because I don't do running. I'm not a runner. I don't like to run. It's not my thing. And so I said, if you ever see me running, follow me, because I'm being chased by something. And she said, well, I don't want to catch up to the thing that's chasing you. I'm going to go the other way. I was like,
I'm exactly the same way. I don't run after anything. I run because I'm being chased. I mean, I might run after an ice cream truck. That's about it. That's the only thing I'm going to run after. Okay, well, I'm going to go next, and I'm going to go in chronological order.
Yeah.
Why not? Okay. And as I said, I've named my stories.
Mm-hmm.
So the second one is called Visiting the Baby. Okay. So this, and as I've said, guys, I've had a lot of things happen. I mean, I have had a male voice from my closet say, hey, Jessica. I've had a lot of things happen. And I'm pretty sure that might have been my brother that passed away, but I'm not positive. But anyways, I've had a lot of things happen. So, but this was over 2 days, so much happening that I thought I was in the movie Poltergeist for a second. Okay. So when my daughter, my eldest, Bella, was born, we had quite a few visitors. We had, I mean, literal ones, like humans. Like we had her dad's mother stayed with us and cooked for a little bit, and then my mom stayed. Well, during the time that my mom was with us, we had quite a few experiences. So some of the most notable ones, and the most notable one that I will never forget to this day, I had put my daughter into a little swing.
Yeah.
Okay. And she was just being so super cute, and she was newborn, you know. And I was bent down and I was looking at her and I was like, oh, do, you know, all this stuff. And I stood up and I went to turn to walk, and I swear I bumped into somebody. Like I bumped into them to the point where I wasn't even thinking, and I was like, oh, excuse me. There's nobody there. There's nobody there. Okay. Almost what I had gotten in my mind was that I was bent over looking at the baby, and so were they. And so when I stood up, I bumped right into them. Like, and I swear it feels like I had bumped into somebody. Okay. Which is why I said, excuse me. Then when my mom was in the living room, I was in the living room. We had cabinet doors in the kitchen. Bam! Slam shut. Okay. Both of us jumped and looked. My mom, of course, obviously less freaked out than me because she's, you know, we had where we were both in the kitchen. We had the sliding glass door cracked open. It shut. And this is a heavy sliding glass door.
Yeah.
Okay. There were bangings, knockings, things being moved around. The baby blanket had gotten moved off of the baby at one point. I didn't know what was going on. I was genuinely worried because at this point with this house, we hadn't experienced anything. And now all of this activity was suddenly just happening over 2 days. And looking back, what I believe it was spirit from the other side, as you said, loved ones, ancestors. They show up during significant life events, deaths, and in this case, a birth, right? My daughter being born, there was obviously a stir on the other side, and a lot of people wanted to come through and visit. Now, one thing that I have kind of equated to this kind of phenomena of slamming things, knocking, things like that, very much like a baby can't communicate in any other way but to cry and grunt. Spirits really can't communicate in any other way either than to try to move something or to maybe rattle something or make a noise, right? So that's kind of what I look at those kind of experiences as, is the other side trying to communicate with you the best way that it knows how, which is by shutting cabinet doors and things like that. But yeah, maybe a little bit underwhelming considering my first experience, but it's the only time that I've ever physically touched something, like literally bumped into it. And it was like a solid person like standing there that I bumped into. It was the freakiest thing ever. Really quickly, on one of my videos, because I don't film my YouTube readings like this.
No.
Obviously I filmed it looking at the point of view of the cards, but one of the rare times that I actually did film like this, something bumped the back of my chair and physically moved me forward, and it's on camera. And people actually commented and they were like, there was no way that was made up because you literally just got jerked forward like that. So things like that have happened, but I've never like been like really grabbed or anything. But that was the first time. Again, it was just the oddest sensation to bump into something that's not there. It's just.
So how long did that activity last for? Did it just stop naturally?
It was like 2 days and that was it. Then after that, there was nothing else that happened.
Did it go when your mum left?
Possibly. I'm telling you, these things follow her. Like, you know, well, obviously she's passed on and she's in spirit now. But yeah, and it's crazy too, because I really fully expected my mom to kind of show up a little bit more in the spirit with me, knowing her history, but maybe that's just not what she was like. No, she shows up in different ways. But yeah,
could be
I think
working more as
these things.
Yeah, well, she could be working more as a guide now than, you know, and she doesn't need to come through it because you still have a relationship with her now, right? So
yeah, and it's crazy because yeah, these things do follow her, or they did. My mom and my aunts had some really crazy stories growing up, so it's not shocking that wherever she's at, there's some kind of activity. So I think that maybe it was a mixture of that, but I also feel like it was just because there was a new baby.
Yeah.
You know, there's a new baby. Although I'll be honest with you, when my son was born, no experiences like that. No, like, my mom, she came and stayed for like a week.
We've done the baby thing. Oh, she got another one. Oh, big whoop.
But then again, you know, when I think about it now, though, now that I'm actually talking about this, the difference I think between my son and my daughter is me. Like with my son, I was more spiritually woke. I was
Yeah.
burning sage. I was like putting black salt at my door. Like I was very much more aware of the spiritual world and actually acknowledging it. And I think that people like, I want to say that I'm pretty sure spirits know at this point, for the most part, this is a no-fly zone. Like I just really don't. I mean, odd things happen. Like the other night, we had an odd thing that happened, but for the most part, no, I'm pretty much left alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're connected most of the time anyway. They don't need to get your attention.
This is true.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
True.
like you say, if they're trying to kind of talk to you and they're trying to get your attention, that's when you're not listening.
This is
So
true. And I want to say really quickly, because this is not my third story, but just really quickly, because I brought it up a couple times and I know people in the audience are probably like, what happened the other night? You keep talking about you keep talking about it. We want to know. Okay, so I had a really disturbing dream. I'm not going to go into the dream, but I had a really disturbing dream and it woke me up. It was a nightmare, which rarely happens to me, y'all, but it woke me up. I looked at the clock. It was 3:45.
mm-hmm.
And I kind of calm myself down. It's just a dream, right? I close my eyes to go back to sleep and I hear what it feels like it was like, because you know, when you're talking, you'll be able to tell somebody's talking here, somebody's talking here, somebody's here. Right here, because I'm laying down, I hear, ah! In a male voice. Okay. And it made me open my eyes and I looked. My son, of course, he weaseled his way into my bed. So he was right next to me. He was sleeping. I look around, everything's quiet, everything's peaceful. I'm listening. I don't hear anything in the house. And I'm like, and I went back to sleep and I slept like a baby. I had absolutely no problems. Katie's face right now is like, you know what I mean? Because just at the end of the day, I didn't feel anything sinister.
I know, and I get it, because obviously we've talked about this a minute ago, but if that happened to me, I don't care what the energy signature is. If they're coming to me in the middle of the night and shouting in my face, I am not going back to sleep. Sod that, I am up. Forget about it.
I evaluated the situation. Was there any imminent danger? Did I need to wake my kids up? Did I need to run out of the house? And everything was quiet. I didn't see anything. I didn't hear. I just was like, what I think I did, because even though I do believe obviously in all of this stuff, I actually have a very rationalized brain with my Libra rising, my Gemini sun, you know, I can be really rational. And so I think that I rationalized it was an auditory hallucination because I was tired, right? I was in between worlds basically. So that's what I chucked it up to. But I don't know. But that's what I keep talking about when I'm talking about what happened the other night.
Yeah, and of course she sends me a voice note that I wake up to because Jess is 5 hours behind me. And like, I'm literally having my coffee and I'm like, listen to the phone. Oh, hell no.
I could tell in Katie's voice too that she didn't want to be like, well, I think that you should stage and throw holy water on the walls. She was trying not to say that, y'all. She was just like, well, I don't know. I just don't know when she says that. Because trust me, Katie always knows. Okay. So when she says that she just doesn't know, it's like code for I don't want to say things to make it worse.
I'm like usually going to pre-sign you into a freaking exorcism.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
I don't feel anything. I haven't felt anything. It was just like whatever, and it hasn't happened since. So I don't know. It was something. Somebody's. If it was anything, it was a very weak attempt to scare me, and obviously it's all okie dokie. Then did the walk of shame out of my energy. Like, well, that's embarrassing.
Trainee spirit going, go and frighten her, and it's like that. It's like I need some more training because that didn't work.
Like I am offended. She didn't even react. You know.
Oh, bless you, bless you. How funny. Well, my last story is different. I've tried to do different ones. Obviously, we had the scary face and we've had the hand. This I liken to more of a energy timestamp because I really don't think it was a ghost. And you'll understand why. Don't cry, Jess. It's okay. So, so I'll explain. So I have twins. They're going to be 13 next month. And obviously Halloween, you take them out trick-or-treating. Halloween is not a big deal as it is in the States over here. It is a thing, but it's, you know, America goes all out. But we took the kids trick-or-treating, you know, they've got their costumes on and we're going door to door and, you know, trick-or-treat. And I'm out on my own with them and it's October, right? It's dark. And so, we go down the last street, and on the corner of that road, there is a house, but around the whole house, there is a hedge. And it's a big freaking hedge. It's probably about a good 7-foot hedge. It's thick. And there's one opening where you can obviously go into the front door. But the rest of it is like a solid wall of leaves, right? And the kids are yapping away about what sweets they've got, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then as I look, I swear, there is a black male, I would say, looking at it, figure, and it walks into the hedge. It does not walk into where the opening is, where you go for the front door. It walks into the hedge, and this is a solid wall of leaves. There is no way through. And this thing, whatever it was, walks like it wasn't struggling. It wasn't like, leaves. It just walked through. No problems, no effort. And I didn't tell the children because I didn't want them freaking out. But I was like, maybe we should go home now. It is kind of late because I was like, I don't know. But at the time, I was a little bit freaked out because I was on my own as an adult with 2 children. But when I think about it now, I do think, like I say, it was a timestamp that because it didn't struggle, I really think that at some point in history, that hedge wasn't there, or it was more open. And so whatever that thing was just walking where it always walked. Like, so it wasn't there to hurt me. It was probably didn't even acknowledge me. It wasn't aware of me. It was just walking, and I happened to catch it.
That's interesting. That to me, it possibly could have been an imprint. I mean, it's your experience, so whatever you're feeling. But to me, it's saying like shadow person.
Could be.
Which, to be honest with you, is creepy to me.
Yeah, no.
The shadow person to me is, I don't know what it is, because I've seen quite a few like videos and pictures of shadow people, and that to me is creepy. Like, I don't know, there's something about the shadow people that just it is one of the more creepier things for me. It's interesting because a lot of your experiences seem to be like where you're seeing these things.
Yeah, no, which is fun considering how much I don't want to, and I've asked not to. I mean, to be fair, touch wood, I haven't seen anything for a really, really long time, and I don't want to. But yeah, I mean, this was what, 4 years ago, maybe. I've not seen anything since. Touch wood. So yeah,
I've been burning Palo Santo.
Yeah. Just don't want to.
Not that Palo Santo's gonna do anything. That's like a light flick, but still, I'm not really worried about it anyways, y'all. In my energy, but just this is for Katie. For me, I'm not worried about it. I have bigger fish to fry.
Absolutely.
Mental stability. That's something we worry about versus like ghosts, okay? But anyways, no, that's a creepy experience to me. And I actually do think that I remember you telling me about that when you came back. I think that was during our friendship. I'm pretty positive. I've known you since the twins were very young. And yeah, that is creepy. That's really weird. Imagine if you went and asked the people and they were like, oh, that's just one-eyed Willie. Like the last one, like, that's that from time to time. He ain't gonna hurt nobody,
No, it's just like I say, my twins are both really super sensitive. They get spooked quite easily. So I didn't want to kind of frighten them and give them my fear. But yeah, it was just, we came home, because I was like, let's get back to the safety of the house with the warm and the light and the whatever spooky you can say outside. It's fine.
Actually makes me curious. Have the twins experienced anything that you know of paranormal wise?
Not that I'm aware of. They're very open. They tell me everything, whether I want them to or not. Children alike, but they haven't told me anything that they. And the only thing, I tell a lie, the only thing was my daughter had her sleepover with her best friend in my lounge, my living room, because their bedroom's not big enough. So when she has a sleepover, they sleep in there, and I get relegated to the bedroom. And she told me the next day that while they were, because kids are like, they didn't go to sleep till like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they heard something coming down the stairs, but they knew that both me and Alfie were asleep. Alfie's my son. So she said they were a little bit scared, but nothing else happened.
Oh, interesting. And things like that don't typically happen too often in your house. So maybe that's something that was attached to that, the little girl or something.
Maybe. But like I say, I have a lot of family up there, and I know that they visit quite a lot of the family members. So maybe they were just checking in the girls, making sure they were safe. Who knows?
Oh, that's very interesting though.
Mm.
I don't know, shadow people.
We freaked Jess up. Yay!
Yeah, that's like the one thing, y'all. Like literally, and honestly, I'm still just too brave for my own good. So if I was faced with it, I would probably still be like, well, I guess we're here now. But there's just something that's creepy about not being able to see it. I don't know. There's something about that. All right. Well, my last experience, well, not my last, it's certainly not my last, but the last one we're going to talk about today is called Dread in the Dungeon.
Dum, dum, dum.
I don't know why I was so theatrical with this. Y'all, I'm just extra on so many levels. I need to reevaluate myself. When we get when we get to Halloween, just watch out. I'm fully preparing to dress up in costumes and everything. Yes. Halloween is the happiest time of the year, y'all.
For yes. Me, if you want to see Jess in costume, please let us know. Who should she be? Because that, yeah.
Well, be like, I'm gonna channel my inner Wednesday Addams. I'm a homicidal maniac. They look like everybody else. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and move on. So my last one, Dread in the Dungeon. Like I said, I wanted to go in chronological order. So I lived near, for the last couple, I don't know, maybe a decade of my life, I've lived close to this area called St. Augustine in Florida. A lot of people know about St. Augustine. It's the oldest city in Florida. Therefore has a lot of history, therefore has a lot of hauntings. And they do a lot of ghost tours as well. I've never went on one, but I've always kind of tiptoed around it. But they have this place where it's a fort. And I should have done research. I'm so bad at this. But there's a fort. It's the only fort that's in St. Augustine. So if you look it up, you'll find it. I think it's like Fort Castillo or something like that. But they have tours that they do around the fort and inside, and they have deals on like Mother's Day and Father's Day. So we went as a family, my mom, my dad, me, my brother, and then Bella, because Milo was not existent at this time. Yes. And we went and did a fort tour for Mother's Day, I believe it was. And so everything was fine. We were walking around. You know, I love history, so I was super into it and everything. And then we got to the part where we would go into the dungeon. Now, the dungeon was, you know, this was a fort that was held from the Spanish. This is their fort. And that's one thing about St. Augustine, just on some side stuff, is that the architecture is beautiful. It's all old Spanish and coquina rock, and it's just beautiful. But there were some real atrocities that happened at that fort. Like, let's not glamorize it. There were some bad things. People would get thrown in the dungeon and just be forgotten about. Yeah. For things as minuscule as stealing a piece of bread because they were starving. And they would get tossed into the dungeon. Literally, people wouldn't check on them for a year. And then by then, they'd just be skeletons, right? So a lot of bad things. And so why not make this a tourist attraction, right? So that sounds like a moneymaker for me. So we go in and everything. And to get into this fort, or to this dungeon, you have to crouch down really low and almost crawl in, because it's like this little, like, it looks like what is like a pit just into nothingness, right? Well, my mom, with her bad back, she was like, that ain't gonna happen for me. So she waited out with Bella. Okay. And it was just me and my dad. I don't think my brother was with us. I think he was at a different part of the dungeon or the castle, looking at other things. Fort, So me and my dad went in there together and we crouched in. When I tell you, as soon as I went into this dungeon, I could not breathe. It was the most stifling, dark, hot energy. Like, it was hot. I was hot. I could not breathe. And of course, we're going in with groups of people. So I'm getting pushed along, to go in deeper and deeper into this dungeon. And it's just pitch black. There's a little tiny, what they would call a window, but it's tiny. I mean, it is literally the size of like my cell phone. That's how big this opening was. Other than that, it's just complete pure darkness in there. You can see like shackle chains on the wall for where they shackled people and everything. And I all of a sudden, and this is why when I think, I'm not sure what this was. So I'll get your professional feedback at the end. but I was all of a sudden transported to a different time. Like I wasn't me anymore. I was somebody shackled to the wall. And when I say, and I get goosebumps about this, when I say the amount of dread and desperation I felt within myself to just, I didn't want to be alive anymore. Never mind getting out of this situation. I just didn't want to be alive. So I started banging my head against the wall. Like
Wow.
I was chained up and I was banging my head as hard as I could against the brick wall to, like, I guess, end myself, to try to, right? And I just kept banging my head over and over and over again. And all of a sudden, I just flashed out of it and I was back to who I was. And unlike your story where you didn't want to run off, no, I turned around and said, move. And I started running out of there, climbing over people. Like there was old people that were like, oh my God, just looking at me. It's like, look, you can move or you can get thrown to the side. I was running out of there and I could hear my dad in the background being like, Jessica, is everything okay? And I had to get out of there. After I got out of there, I ran smack dab into my mom. My dad came very shortly after me and I explained to them what happened. And of course, with the family, they believed me, you know? And my dad was like, well, I didn't see anything like that. You know, typical male, right? But my mom was just like, okay, well, don't go back in there. That was her, like, you know, just don't go back in there.
Well, duh.
Yeah, but that really has stuck with me. Now, nothing followed me home, nothing, you know, anything like that. But I'll never go back to that dungeon.
Yeah.
I went back to that fort a couple times and I went into the moat area, which is now closed down. You used to be able to walk around the moat and you could actually like see the imprints of the cannons, the cannonballs into it and everything. But I, you know, have never gone back in that fort period. And I will never go back in that dungeon. Like you couldn't pay me enough money. It was, and I could tell I was male. When I had switched over to who this was, I could tell I was male. I was naked. I had lots of body hair. My hair, I could tell it was grown out and maybe had like a dreadish, like dreads, but it wasn't because of by choice. It was like because I hadn't brushed my hair in a while.
Yeah.
And it was very hot and I could feel the impact of the wall. I couldn't feel the pain, but I could feel the impact of the wall when I was beating my head against it.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's my experience. And I don't know if that was an imprint. I don't know if that was like, I don't know what that was.
See, my first thought was that was a version of you, that it was a past life. But the more I learnt into it while you were talking, I don't think it is. I think it is. I think you literally, because you're so empathic and you're so tuned in and you're so intuitive, I think you were shown. And I think it wasn't enough for you to see. I think you had to be. Is what I'm picking up. I think literally, like they literally flashed you back to what it was like. Why? I do not know. Maybe there's no reason. Maybe it's just that the energy is so strong in there that if you are sensitive, you're going to like tune into a radio signal, basically.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's never really been cleared. That's the thing. Because it's so closed off, the energy imprint that's in there has never had a chance to disperse or escape, or so like all that energy from all of those years is still sitting in there.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not been cleared. And it's kind of been turned into a mockery, like a tourist attraction where we go in, we go, oh my gosh, ooh, ah. And I remember when the tour guide was telling us about it as we were getting closer to the dungeon, I remember thinking how horrible that would be and how awful that must feel. Like, and I had like a real amount of like sympathy for those people in that situation. I couldn't imagine being locked into darkness and then just forgot about.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to somebody who lives in England. You know, our history is so littered with. I mean, you can't go too far without bumping into a bloody castle. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, with our history and the things that English people have done to each other and to foreign people, shall we say? We don't necessarily have the best history, but yeah, I mean, we have tourist attractions. We have, you know, the London Dungeons, which is part of the Tower of London, is a very famous tourist attraction. And you know, I've never been down there, but I've seen it online, and you can go and see how it was. And I'm just thinking, like, as a sensitive person, that's just not my bag. I don't need to go and see it. I can imagine well enough. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And and it's crazy too because I do like museums. I love looking at
Oh, me
history.
too.
I
Me
wouldn't
too.
be adverse to going to like morbid museums and like museums like where there's torture things and stuff. Like I wouldn't be adverse to that. But to actually like make a, I don't know, mockery out of those things,
Yeah.
it is somewhat offensive when you think about it.
Yeah, I
And,
agree.
and could you imagine like being in that situation at like your lowest point in life, obviously? And could you even fathom to think to yourself, one day in the future, there will be people who take tours through this place and think, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, like to think that, I don't know. It reminds me of there's another place in St. Augustine, which I've been to a couple times, called Ripley's Believe It or Not. You've probably heard of
I've
Ripley.
heard of it, yeah.
Who hasn't, right? But he obviously in the museum, there's like items of like torture, like there's cat o' nine tails and things like that. And some of those items, you know, they're available for people to touch, which is weird, weird to me. And I'm like, I don't touch those things. And I advise my kids, do not touch those things. Look with your eyes, not your hands. Um, but some of those items had a very dark energy. There was one item in particular where it was the mask that they put over people when you electrocute them.
Yeah.
And it was in like this frame thing, and it was like the mask. I get goosebumps. That mask had some of the most evil energy I have ever felt in my life. I didn't even want to sit there and stare at it for too long. Like I was just, it was.
That's the thing, somebody who's intuitive and is able to do divination. There is a very well-known thing called psychometry, where literally you can hold an object in your hand and pick up its energy signature, so you can tell about the person that owned it, right? So, it's like a way in, if you like.
Yeah.
So, if you're a sensitive person and you're touching objects that have been used as torture and hurting people, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of iffy about like things like that anyways, like secondhand stuff, thrift shops, furniture, not just because of the vermin and bugs you can bring into your house, but also just the energy. You don't know
Yeah,
who had that. You don't know what happened on that dresser or on that bed frame or whatever, and it's just like there's something about that where yeah, I've noticed that I am the type of empath where I can touch something and feel like the energy of it. And so I don't know. I don't know what that experience was weird. And I'm honestly willing to say that, your first instinct of a past life, there could be some truth in that.
mm,
I find that we recycle back and go back to places energetically where we once
yeah,
were. And since I have been around St. Augustine for so long, like it's been within an hour, sometimes just 25 minutes away from me. And I do feel some kind of weird sensation when I go there. And I do have the fear of being locked away.
mm,
It's very possible, but I
yeah.
don't know. But whatever it was a creepy experience. I'll never go back to
I
that
bet.
ever
No,
again.
it doesn't sound like somewhere that I would want to go either, to be
I
fair. So,
don't really advise people to go into places where people were held until they died. That's just weird.
no, absolutely. I mean, one of the places I would love to go at some point in my life is to Salem. I think in Massachusetts, I think to go there, I'm fascinated by the witch trials, and I think to go and experience that firsthand would be fascinating. But at the same time, there is a part of me that's like, I don't know how I would feel in that space.
Think that Salem, because there was a lot of misconceptions,
Yeah,
there was a lot of unfairness. I mean, because even if you are a witch, that doesn't give somebody a right to drown you, put stones on you, light you on fire, all these things, right? But the fact that a lot of it was hearsay, mass hysteria, gossip, things like that, and it led to people's actual like demise.
yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of anger that's in Salem.
Hmm.
And I don't know. It's one of those places where it's like, I don't know if there's a part of me that's like, yeah, why not? But then there's a part of me that's like,
I know, I know.
you know?
They get people in the comments going, "Oh, I go all the time. It's wonderful."
Yeah. And maybe it is, right? I don't know, because I haven't, you know, and again, energy, places, these things, it affects people differently. Like my dad said, he didn't see anything.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. But there is one place in the world where I think the majority of people would find it really difficult to go, and that is Auschwitz. In, you know, obviously after what happened in World War II, and I've seen people. It's now that we have TikTok, of course, that you're seeing these things more than ever, and they do trips to Auschwitz, and of course, it's a very solemn place. It's a very sad place. It's a place of reverence. But there have been like influencers who are taking it more, they're a lighter energy, and they're almost like trying to do like, I won't say fun, but they're kind of going like, "Hi guys, I'm in Auschwitz," and you're like, "Can you not do that, please?"
Yeah, it's just completely disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's completely disrespectful, and Auschwitz is actually one of the places that I would actually like to visit, because I am a fanatic for World War II and the Holocaust. I actually think I was there at some point. I think I played a part in that. I don't think I was Jewish though. I think I was German. I think I've paid back some weird extreme karma for something bad that I did in the past life. Um, just being transparent, guys. Past lives are not always like you're the queen or you're the good guy. I've been the bad guy before, I think. And I get goosebumps just talking about that. That's like one of my signals for you're on to something, or it's correct, or something like that. But I would like to go, and I think I would like to put some protection on myself when I go, but I think I would like to go and just let myself cry, let myself experience it, let myself understand how atrocious that is.
Yeah.
Absolutely deplorable.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I have a zero tolerance for people making like Holocaust jokes and like, oh, you know, whatever, downplaying it, minimizing it.
No, I would say I think, you know, anybody who makes light of that or downplays it just, well,
Doesn't know the full scope of it, hasn't watched enough documentaries.
well, they're either willfully ignorant at this point, or they just, in my opinion, I'd say my opinion, not a nice person. But hey.
And you know, and it's interesting because I have started, I don't know, I got a couple chapters into Mein Kampf, which is Hitler's manifesto or whatever. He was a very charismatic person.
Yep.
And actually had really good ideas.
Yeah, and he was a really good orator. He was a really good, you know, his rallies and speeches, and he was good at rallying up the people. And you know, we're not making any comparisons to anybody, but you can see the history repeats itself.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting because it's like when you have that power, you make a choice.
Yep.
Are you going to use it for good, or are you going to use it for not good?
Yep, 100%.
You know, and it shows you also with the Holocaust, and then it shows you, and that's the most brilliant thing about us not being big enough to be monetized. We wouldn't be able to say these words. We would have to find a way to say it, but we can say whatever the fuck we want right now. Basically, guys, okay? But that's the thing about the Holocaust, slavery, the Salem witch trials. It's the group think in the minimizing things and not really looking at it as severe as it is that can cause these atrocities to happen.
Yep.
Because there's this wonderful quote, and I forget who it's by. I forget the full context of the quote, guys. But it's basically like, oh, well, they came for the mentally ill, and I didn't care because I wasn't mentally ill. They came for their aristocrats or whatever, and I didn't care because I wasn't an aristocrat. They came for the communists, and I didn't care because I wasn't a communist. They came for the Jews, and I didn't care because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was nobody to help me.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really a node to like getting swept up in the mass thinking of it all. Which
no,
I know
because there's another
whatever.
No, but there's another quote. Again, I can't remember who said it, but basically, evil happens when good people stand by and do nothing.
Yes.
You know, so it's like if you are standing on the sidelines and watching these atrocities and you're not doing anything or speaking up or, you know, something, you can't. I'm not saying you're as bad as, but you're not great.
I kind of think that you're worse.
And
maybe that's just my Libran no mercy, there's right and then there's wrong type of rising energy that I have. I think I would make a phenomenal judge.
you imagine Jess as a lawyer?
I'm like, you know, because I think that honestly, if you know better, you have a fundamental responsibility to do better. Mm-hmm. Period.
Yeah.
And so if you know something's not right, you have more of a responsibility. I can forgive almost, not saying I would, but I could almost forgive somebody who believes in their crap. So they're doing this. They're committing these crimes or these horrible acts because they actually believe in it, versus somebody who knows it's wrong and they're just too cowardice to stick up for something. You're worse. You are worse, in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, we kind of got off topic, but it is an interesting conversation for sure.
It is.
You know, it's again, it's important to have conversations like this with everything that's happening in the world right now. I think it's a good topic, you know.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was our supernatural / paranormal episode. Some really interesting stories and experiences, I think, and I hope that you guys watching this have found it interesting as well, and maybe it sparked memories for you where you're like, oh my god, I went through something similar and I completely forgotten about it, you know. And like I say, let us know in the comments any of your experiences. I'm sure you all have something, because we've all been through something that's a bit weird. So yeah, let us know. And just thank you for watching, right? So what we're talking about next time, my darling?
Well, next time we decided to go ahead and talk about the tarot, because it was brought up and we had a comment. I think we had a comment or two talking about they would be interested in that. And yeah, I think that it'll be interesting. We're going to talk about tarot, how we got into it, how we learned tarot, the good, the bad, the ugly, pet peeves, our experiences as readers. So this is going to be the episode where y'all going to get a little bit of tea.
Oh, you're going to get the tea and then some, because good girl, we have the tea for days, right?
Yeah. Tarot has been a big part of my life for over a decade now, if not a decade, pretty much as long as I've been friends with you. So yeah, there's been a lot. So we'll talk about it. Hopefully I don't get canceled, but you know, I do have a backup.
But hey, if you're wanting the tea next time, and like I say, we're not monetized, so it allows us a bit of free range to say certain things. So come back and watch that episode. It'll be interesting, I'm sure. Anyway, guys, look, thank you so much for watching this. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you found it interesting, and we will definitely see you on next one. Give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it, and have a great week. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks. Bye. See y'all.
Bye, guys. Bye. Bye.